One more minute. Hang on. Just before we begin, I want to let everybody know that we have some food, sandwiches and soda and some chips in the council office over there. More than welcome before and after the meeting, okay? All right, Madam Clerk, let's begin this process. All right. I'm going to call this meeting to order, Madam Clerk. Can I please have a roll call?
Council President Igliozzi.
Present?
Councilwoman Anthony. Majority Whip Castillo. Councilman Correa. Council President Pro Tempore Espinal.
Present.
Councilman Gonzalez.
Present.
Deputy Majority Leader Harris.
Present.
Councilor Kerwin.
Present.
Councilwoman LaFortune is absent. Councilor Miller.
Present.
Senior Deputy Majority Leader Narducci.
Here.
Councilwoman Ryan.
Present.
Councilor Salvatore.
Present.
Majority Leader Taylor.
Here.
You have 13 present and 1 absent. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item is the invocation. We have a guest this evening, Mr. Oscar Vargas. He's the newly elected councilman from Ward 15, and we welcome him. And Oscar, please approach.
Thank you. Thank you. Our name of the Father, the Holy Spirit. Amen. God, please help us to make the right decision today for this great city and bless every single one and their family. Amen.
Thank you. Newly elected Councilman Oscar Vargas. Next item is the Pledge of Allegiance, led by the Senior Deputy Majority Leader, Nicholas J. Narducci Jr.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman. Madam Clerk, first item, please, item number 1.
Call for special meeting, communication from Council President John J. Igliozzi. Item 1, request filed with the acting city clerk July 9, 2021, requesting a special meeting to be called on the 13th day of July, 2021 at 5:00 p.m. per the Zoom credentials.
Received. Next item.
Warrant for special meeting, item number 2, warrant of the acting city clerk to David Tassoni, city sergeant, certifying that he has notified each member of the city council of the special meeting to be called on the 13th day of July, 2021 at 5:00 p.m. per the Zoom credentials.
Received. Item number 3.
Committee on Finance, Councilwoman Joanne Ryan, Chairwoman, transmits the following with recommendation the same be severally adopted as amended. Item number 3, an ordinance amending ordinance number 23 of chapter 2020-23 adopted June 30th, 2020, providing for the assessment and collection of 2020 taxes in a sum not less than $357,212,255 and not more than $369,145,895. being based on a 100% of the 2020-2021 fiscal year tax collection and setting the rates for fiscal year 2022.
Mr. President,
Majority Leader Taylor.
make a motion to approve on a roll call vote.
Second, Mr. President.
second by Deputy Majority Leader Harris. Discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Council President Igliozzi.
Aye.
Councilwoman Anthony. Majority Whip Castillo. Councilman Correa. Council President Pro Tempore Espinal.
Aye.
Councilman Gonzalez.
Aye.
Deputy Majority Leader Harris.
Aye.
Councilor Kerwin. Aye. Councilwoman LaFortune is absent. Councilor Miller. Aye. Senior Deputy Majority Leader Narducci.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ryan. Aye. Councilor Salvatore.
Aye.
Majority Leader Taylor.
Aye.
You have 13 ayes, 1 absent. The motion passes for the first time on a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item number 4.
Item number 4, an ordinance adopting the American Rescue Plan Act grant budget for the period of April 29, 2021 through September 30th, 2021.
Councilwoman Ryan.
Mr. President, I make a motion to enter a substitution for item 4. Item 4A has been distributed to the council electronically as well as placed in front of your desks this evening.
Second, Mr. President.
Second by Deputy Majority Leader Harris. Discussion?
I would like to offer an explanation for the substitution, if
Councilwoman
I may.
Ryan.
Thank you.
Please.
The substitution essentially adds the Water Fire Inc. to the section entitled Grants to Nonprofits in the amount of $300,000. This amount was added at the request, actually after Water Fire expressing their immediate need for those funds. That's why it was added. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions on the amendment? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thanks. Senior Deputy Majority Leader Nicholas Narducci.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to accept item number 4, amended version, as read by a roll call vote.
Second that motion, Mr. President.
Second by Deputy Majority Leader Harris. Discussion. Councilwoman Anthony. Councilwoman, press the button so your mic's on, please. There you go.
Here I am.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm standing to speak against the passage of the ARPA ordinance. Just so we all understand what we're doing this evening, we're going to appropriate 42.5 million of the 160 million we're receiving in ARPA funds. And the reason I'm standing to speak in opposition is because we haven't had any public engagement around this process. This is a large sum of money that we are spending. And while I understand there's no requirement for us to have a public hearing because whoever anticipated we would receive any ARPA funds, this is a result of the COVID crisis. We received the federal stimulus money. Now we have these monies to spend. And my concern is that everybody has their priorities and their initiatives. So the mayor has his, city council may have theirs, but we really need to have a process around how we're going to allocate these funds. And we have to allow the public to speak about that. So I am standing tonight because I think this sets a bad precedent on how we're going to be spending our funds. We need to have public engagement. We have to allow the committee that's been formed to establish a process to determine how we should prioritize these funds. Everyone and their brother is going to need these funds for one reason or another. They're all very compelling reasons, but we have to have a process. So I am asking my fellow colleagues not to vote in favor, to vote against this tonight. We can either amend it and come back to allow the 19.5 million we need to pass so we can pass our budget. But we need to make sure the rest of the funds go through a vetting process. So I appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you, Councilwoman Anthony. Councilman Majority Leader Taylor.
Mr. President, I have a couple questions. One of them is the $7 million for the small businesses. I figured it out. There's $2,500 for 2,800 businesses. If we do not come up with 2,800 businesses, let's say out of that 7 million, there's 600,000 left over. Is there anywhere that money is going to go? Do we have a plan of where that money is going to be given to, or what's going to happen with any extra money? I don't know where that's going to go.
Councilwoman
President,
Ryan.
I can try to answer that. It would be a residual, be a reserve. There's a deadline or a sunsetting on the application period. The summary document that was provided provides a deadline date to apply. If there's funds left over, it just falls back into opera dollars, and the contact or the manager of those funds is the opera manager.
And Councilman Ryan. Any other, Councilman Anthony, 1 second, please. I have you. Any other comments by council members? One second. Any other comments by council members? With that, Councilman Anthony, then Councilman Ryan.
So I mean, not to belabor the point, but the fact we're even having this discussion on city council floor means that we haven't even had the opportunity to vet the $7 million that are being spent for small businesses. I mean, our responsibility as a council and the finance committee is to understand the specifics and be allowed the opportunity to ask these kind of questions. So the fact we're even having that discussion on council floor is the reason why this shouldn't be passed.
Councilman Ryan.
Anyone else?
Sorry.
I'll yield to anyone else.
1 second, Councilman. Let the record reflect that City Solicitor Jeff Dana is present. Councilman John Goncalves.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate having the opportunity to speak. I want to echo the councilwoman's remarks. I think there needs to be transparency around this process. There's $7 million that's clearly earmarked, but it would be nice to know how that is going to be allocated and what the protocol is going to be for that. So I want to thank the councilwoman for all of her work in the committee process, but I do think that we should continue to have the conversation and think about how we continue public engagement on this. One thing that I also want to note is that we received a letter from the Providence Coalition of Neighborhood Associations. And in that letter, they have requested to be a part of that process. They represent about 19 neighborhood associations across the city of Providence. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to ensure that they have a voice in the process. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Goncalves. Any other comments or questions by council members?
Mr.
Councilman
President,
Ryan.
just to answer questions of my colleagues, in the summary document, there's a full explanation of the Small Business Relief Fund program. Moreover, we did discuss the program in committee when opera was discussed. So I think that we have touched on the elements. I also offered an explanation that wasn't discussed in committee. So thank you, Leader Taylor, for asking that question. But the Opera Stimulus Fund budget invests over $42 million in COVID-19 relief for our small businesses, community centers, and other projects that will address both immediate needs and pay long-term dividends to the city of Providence. Specifically, this budget is considered an immediate need budget because it provides summer funding. It provides youth funds for summer programming, funds for youth investment, early learning infrastructure, anti-violence investments, which we've heard so much about the critical need for, mentoring programs, non-violence training. It also provides funding for the Roger Williams Park Gateway, Providence Community Library funding, public library, Providence Public Library funding, homelessness intervention program funding, Providence Center diversion program. As we heard before, water fire is also included, and also a really critically important sewer investment program, street sweeping and sewer repairs. $17 million, $17+ million goes into this budget, into the general fund, as well as the $7 million small relief, the Relief for Small Business program. While I heard my council colleague express that she would like a public hearing, I hear you, and I'm more than willing to entertain a public hearing going forward on the remainder of the dollars. But these are essential, immediate needs that we worked on as a council body. In the Finance Committee, had healthy discussion as well as with the administration on the immediate needs for these funds. So with that, I'd like to recommend approval and thank my committee for their hard work on this project.
Mr. President, if I may,
Senior Deputy Majority Leader Narducci.
I agree with Chairwoman Ryan that this was vented in the Finance Committee. And I've heard, especially with the murders and the shootings up 150% in the last so many years in our city, I've heard from numerous community members, community leaders, everybody wants something to do for the youth. Well, you know what? I'm proud to support this budget just for what we're doing for the summer programming. Summer camp for Providence residents, $600,000. $1 million for summer jobs for our kids to try to keep them out of the trouble they're getting into. And also, some that I pushed very hard for was an $80,000 summer basketball league to key on the older kids that don't have anything to do in the boys clubs and stuff because they're over that certain age. Again, I stand to fully support this for what we're doing for the youth of our city.
Thank you, Senior Deputy Majority Leader Narducci. One second. Any of the council colleagues? Councilman Goncalves.
So I just want to state on the record that we support those programs unequivocally. Those are really important programs for the city of Providence, and we do support those. We are just asking for a more transparent process when it comes to the protocol around business relief. That's $7 million that's earmarked. There are $42 million that are allocated here. I think we have to be very cautious about how we allocate that funding. And more broadly, there's $160 million that will be allocated. So in the future, it's critically important that we engage the community. They have a voice in the public process. And that's what we're relaying here. And those are the concerns that we have. Moving forward, I would also say that it is also going to be critically important that we do everything that we can to try to engage as many voices so that they are a part of the process. One of the things that we saw very clearly with Waterfire is that there were some maneuvers on the back end that resulted in that funding being stripped away. And after the public outcry, we then saw the funding put back in, and we do want to appreciate all the members of that committee for listening to the wider community. But I think our consensus here is that we certainly include more of the public in that process and certainly do everything that we can to support the city of Providence and the residents within it.
Mr.
Thank
President,
you, Council. Senior Deputy Majority Leader.
motion was made to pass item number 4 as amended on a voice call.
Any other? Let the record reflect that Councilman LaFortune is present.
So
Madam
noted.
Clerk, roll call, please.
Council President Iglesias.
Aye.
Councilwoman Anthony. Majority Whip Castillo. Councilman Correa.
Aye.
Council President Pro Tempore Espinal.
Aye.
Councilman Gonsalves.
Nay.
Deputy Majority Leader Harris.
Aye.
Councilor Kerwin. Nay. Councilwoman LaFortune.
Nay.
Councilor Miller. Nay. Senior Deputy Majority Leader Narducci.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ryan.
Aye.
Councilor Salvatore.
Aye.
Majority Leader Taylor.
Nay.
You have 8 ayes, 6 nays. The motion carries. The matter is passed for the first time on a roll call vote as amended.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item, item number 5.
Item number 5, an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 2021-8, number 177, approved April 19, 2021, of the ordinances of the City of Providence, making an appropriation of $510,917,760 and no cents for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021, as amended.
Senior
Mr.
Deputy
President,
Majority Leader Narducci.
I'd like to make a motion to accept item number 5 for approval on a voice vote.
Second.
Second by Deputy Majority Leader Harris. Discussion. Councilwoman Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to, what is before us tonight is obviously the FY 2022 city budget. While no budget is perfect, in a very difficult environment filled with uncertainty and with continued impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, and after months of working collaboratively with the Alorza administration and my council colleagues, on behalf of the Providence Finance Committee, I'm proud to present and recommend approval of the FY 2022 city budget this evening. Firstly, it is a fiscally responsible budget. There is no property tax increase. This budget delivers key city services that residents expect and residents deserve. This budget invests in public safety so that our residents can feel safe and our businesses can thrive. Some of the budget highlights we talked about in committee. This budget invests in $350,000 to expand the number of pre-kindergarten classrooms in Providence, increasing access to quality early learning programs. It invests in the Department of Inspections and Standards to address quality of life issues. It invests in the Department of Public Property to hire additional personnel to handle projects in a more efficient and timely fashion. This budget creates a new Department of Equity and Inclusion. It invests in public safety by expanding diversion programs. It creates anti-violence programs and makes provisions to fund the recruitment of a new police academy to attract and maintain a diverse and well-trained police department. It continues to invest in city parks with a portion of tax stabilization revenue going to the Parks and Recreation Fund. It provides additional $300,000 for public community centers for programs that qualify for opera resources. It creates new community relations and diversion services major position within the Providence Police Department. 10% of tax revenue from projects with a tax stabilization agreement will be dedicated to supporting debt service on the council initiated $25 million Providence Redevelopment Agency special obligation bond that has funded the Providence Housing Trust Fund. It invests in opera funds for anti-violence initiatives that we just spoke of, night basketball, recreational center programs for our youth, to provide quality programming. Creates funding for free internet access at our largest parks and recreation centers, and invests in sewer repair fund, as well as a $7 million small business relief program. Thank you very much. With that, I recommend approval.
Councilman, Majority Leader Taylor.
I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but for the past 3 years, I've been bringing up the issue of the fire chief in the budget. I will be voting against this budget because the fire chief is still budgeted in this budget as a line item. For the past 7 years, we have budgeted a total of $1.2 million for a fire chief. That's $175,000 times the 7 years. And at the end of that, we don't have a fire chief, nor do we have the $1.2 million. In my first budget, I brought this issue up and I was gonna vote against it, but the administration at that time, before they flew off to Hawaii, said that they would put the fire chief back in. And as everybody can remember, in November, which I have the letter here, that the commissioner sent to then President Sabina Matos, stating that he had a potential candidate for fire chief for Providence Fire Department, and he would make one before December 31st, 2019, if the council approved the budget adjustment of $40,000 that he was receiving without the council's approval. Next, as you know, at that point in time, the president didn't file she just took the letter. Once I got the letter, I filed an ethics complaint, and I'm still waiting to hear on that after 1.5 years. A few months ago, we had the last budget. I stated that I would vote for that budget because it was almost over. There was only 2 months left. But I also stated at that budget, as long as the fire chief line item was in there, I would not and will not vote for this budget with that in there. Mayoral laws are acknowledged this year in April that there are no plans to hire a fire chief in Providence, but his proposed budget still fully funds the $175,000 fire chief job. Public Safety Commissioner Stephen Parry is currently acting fire chief, which I brought up several times during the Finance Committee, myself, Mr. President, you at the time as Finance Chair, and Madam Chair has also brought it up, that we are violating the charter of the City of Providence. Not one way, but two ways, possibly three ways. The first, under the charter, under powers and duties of the mayor, under 302, it says to appoint all heads of city departments and agency with approval of the city council. Everybody was, not everybody, majority of the people, director heads are brought through, except Commissioner Parry or / Fire Chief, Acting Fire Chief Parry. The second violation is clear, and I've also asked at every Finance Committee for the last 3 years, in no case shall a person serving under an acting appointment hold office on that basis for more than 90 days. We're going on almost 7 years that the commissioner has been acting chief. He's not qualified as fire chief. He doesn't do the job as fire chief. In the rules and regulations, as I was a fireman for 28 years, any fire that's 2 alarms or greater, he shall report to. The other day at Admiral Street, when they had the 3-alarm fire, he wasn't there, and he hasn't been showing up to the fires. He also hasn't been doing this commissioner's job, because as we know, with the shootings that we've had, the 12 that we've had this year, he's never around. So if we want to cut, I think we should look at getting the fire chief's position out, and also maybe look at getting rid of the commissioner's staff and people, because now we have a commissioner and a deputy commissioner. Let me see. Also, one other thing, and I don't know if it's happening, is that the city council has to approve a $5,000 any spending. If he is, and I'm not sure the mayor is or isn't, or he might just be paying him the full $175,000 out of the fire chief's pay, or if he's moving the $40,000 from the $175,000 to the commissioner's pay, that's also a violation. And we also heard that he's under salary review as the commissioner and as the fire chief. But as commissioner, the reason he didn't get the $40,000 because the salary review just met and didn't offer the $40,000 pay raise. They only offered $132,000. That's the max he should be paid. But unfortunately, if he retires tomorrow, because he's been acting for 4 years, he's going to get a $175,000 pension. So like I said, the mayor states there are no plans to hire a fire chief, and he's reiterated that for the past 7 years, and he's not planning to hire a fire chief. Then I ask, why is this line item for a fire chief still there? The city council could use the $1.2 million to fix our schools, recreation centers, or like I stated before, because I sit on the claims and pending suits with the chairman, we hear how many people are falling and getting hurt on our sidewalks in the city. So we could use this $1.2 million to fix our sidewalks and knock our claims down. I would ask my colleagues to let's stop looking the other way like the administration is doing on this item and vote no for this budget as long as this line item is still in the budget. It's time to take action. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Majority Leader Taylor. Any further discussion on this item? Councilwoman Anthony.
Yes, I would just like to say also, I will not be voting for this budget but for a different reason. I have, when it was amended on the last finance meeting, it was amended to add an additional $48,500 for the recruitment for the next police academy. I will say that I have supported the police contract. I supported the police academy that's in the budget this year. I think amending the budget to include that additional amount this year, while the amount isn't really what is at issue in my mind, it's more of a message that we have not delivered on our word that we would create some police reform, some accountability. We've been listening to, it's been a nationwide discussion, it's been a city discussion on how we need to reform our police. And rather than do anything through the budget, which is what I hoped would be done, we actually added an additional amount, which I think just really says to the people who have been asking for this reform, it really says, we're not interested in that. We're just going to continue doing business as usual. And so I cannot support this budget for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Anthony. Any other further comments? With that,
Mr. President,
Mr. President,
Councilman
Please.
Ryan, you spoke.
I will be
already
supporting
once, so
this budget.
Hang on 1 second. Senior Deputy
Oh.
Majority Leader Narducci, then Councilman Ryan.
I will be supporting this budget and for all the right reasons, as you heard Chairwoman Ryan read off. I don't know if anybody's been watching the news or listening to the news, but I said it earlier. Our shootings and our murders in the city of Providence are up 150%. We need more police officers. Between what we're putting on, the 50 we're putting on, chances are, as we all know, you lose a certain percentage. So you might make 38 police officers this time around. We're already in the process of losing like 28 from this year till next year on retirement. We can't take from the police department. You heard and the chairwoman state how many programs you're setting up, how many programs we're funding to try to help people that are looking for the help, because again, my opinion, the people that are doing these shootings and killings in our city, it's all gang related. They're not coming to us for help. We have to reach out to the youth. When you got 14 and 15-year-old kids using guns, yeah, them are the kids we need to have programs for that we can help, and we have it in this budget. The police department, you know, let me just say it this way. If you don't think we need the police, then you know what? I don't want to really say it the way I want to say, but when stuff happens in your neighborhood, don't call them. Who do we all call when things happen in our neighborhood? We call the police. We rely on them. We're short-handed. Ask any one of your lieutenants or sergeants. On any given weekend in District 7, any given weekend, we're running with 3 police officers. If you know how District 7 is set up, it's one of the busiest districts in the city. We're running with 3 police officers. If they happen to get one traffic call of an accident or something, that officer's off the street for at least a couple hours because now he's gonna go back and do a report. We need more cops. We don't need less cops. We need more cops. They are the ones keeping our city safe. I am sick and tired of my community meetings, okay? At my community meetings, that people are saying they're afraid to go outside their own front door because of the way the shootings are going on. I don't want the people in my community to live that way. I don't want the people in my city, as a city councilman, in my city to live that way. Apples Avenue is being destroyed on the overrunning of criminalization that's going on up there with just the ATV actions going on. How many people from my neighborhood, seniors in my neighborhood, that used to love going up to Apples Avenue for dinner? Sitting outside, enjoying the night, sitting at the Pasquale Plaza, listening to the music. They're afraid. They're afraid. We need the police. We need more policing. I'm hoping after this academy, I'm hoping the recruitment works well, and I'm hoping we can get another 50 to 60 police officers on the street. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilman Ryan.
Mr. President, I rise for a second time on this matter merely to thank the folks that have gotten us to where we are tonight. I'm remiss if I wouldn't thank my colleagues on the Finance Committee for their hard work. We listened to hours of testimony. I want to thank my council colleagues who joined those finance meetings and engaged in the discussion. And we had healthy discussion on all of these items. Multiple weeks of finance meetings, and your input truly helped to get us where we are today and put together this budget which again is fiscally responsible and a good solid budget. I also want to thank the administration's finance team led by Chief Larry Mancini and Finance Director Sarah Silveria. I want to thank our fantastic clerks. They were with us every evening. They stood side by side with us to make sure that our meetings went smoothly. Everyone got answers to the questions they had as efficiently as possible. I'd like to specifically thank and name Tina Mastriani, Sherry Petronio, Angela Harris, and Donna Paligia, who helped me run our meetings. I'd also like to thank our City Council Finance team, Auditor Gina Costa, a remarkably talented woman, and Chief of Staff and Treasurer James Lombardi. You showed every courtesy to my council colleagues, my committee members, answering every question and delivering every response requested. The effort is reflected, their effort is reflected in this budget, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Ryan. Any other comments or questions? Councilman LaFortune.
Thank you, Council President. So first I want to start by saying thank you to Chair Ryan for running such a spirited conversations during the Finance Committee's meetings, and also all the people that she mentioned, all their work and their effort. And I also want to thank Councilman Narducci for his words, which are very important. My sister lives in your ward, and she appreciates everything that you have done and the investments that you and your advocacy and the investments that you have made in the community. And I agree with you. This is our city. You and I have talked about growing up in the city. You went to Hope High School. I went to Mount Pleasant. My sister went to Mount Pleasant, who lives in your ward as well. And we want to live in a city where every resident feels safe. That is critical. That's part of our quality of life. And so I did not hear anyone say here that they don't want police officers. No one said that. What they're asking for is investments in reforming and reimagining the way policing looks like in the city. There has been an influx of shootings. I have seen the impact that it has on communities. I was at a funeral just last month of a young woman, 19 years old. 19 was my daughter's Sunday school teacher when she went to school, to church with my parents in my childhood church. And she was shot in the head, just sitting in the car. Had nothing to do with whatever the person who the intended target was for, just sitting in a car. A young man got shot in the hand on Camp Street in my ward, trying to protect his 3-year-old child. So I hear you. The gun violence is out of control in our city. And this budget definitely has investments to address some of the needs of our youth and some of the needs of our community. But we cannot stop the discussion around police reform, because we can hire as many police officers as possible, but we need to ensure that there is real community policing. And there are officers here, like I was walking in and I saw just a diverse group of officers who are now representing our city. I have officers I went to school with who are coaching football, who are part of the community. Some of them live right here in Providence, and they know the community that they serve. And I appreciate that. But we've also seen some behaviors of officers that's not so appropriate. And so we need cultural competency training. We do need our leaders accountable. And one of the things that Councilman Taylor brought up was holding the leaders accountable. If we say we're going to do something, we have to do it. The state has been talking about police reform. They passed the budget without doing it. We all have talked about police reform. We've seen people who've come in to testify. We've heard the community asking us to make certain investments to reform the police, to change the culture. Just after the sales incident, I received close to 1,000 emails. 1,000 emails. And I'm sure more came in because many counselors received those. So Police reform does not mean not wanting the police. I want to be safe. I lost someone to gun violence. And guess what? They have yet to find the person who pulled the trigger of a young man, just finished college, about to work for the city to develop youth programs. All he did was walk out of a bodega, and the target was intended for someone who was standing out there, but it hit him in the head and he died. And that was the love of my life. And I lost him. So I hear you. I hear you. This budget does make those critical investments. And I thank every single counselor. I thank the chair. I thank council president. I thank everyone for advocating for these things. But we cannot stop the conversation around reimagining policing. So a few years ago, we passed what was formerly known as the Community Safety Act, right? And one of the provisions in there was around the gang database, and was to implement a new system that was more transparent. Now, the police department, public safety, bought a new system. Why haven't we used it? So some of these people who are pulling the triggers are the same people who've been pulling triggers for years. So why aren't we using the system? Why aren't we using the tools if we're spending that money into it? So there are ways for us to reform the police and make investments in the training that's needed, but also to keep our community safe. But we can't have one conversation without having the other. So I appreciate, again, the investments in our city resources, but I don't want to be like the state and pass another budget without doing the right thing. And that's holding our leaders. And this is not even about the police officers, because you know what? I appreciate every single police officer who leaves their home every day to go and serve our community, because at the end of the day, some of them don't know if they're going to come home. So they're risking their lives to protect us, many of them, especially, and then the ones from the community, they're protecting people they grew up with, people who are part of their families. I appreciate that. But we cannot pass another budget if another Hanley incident might happen, if some of the comments that were made on Sale Street occurs again. So I think there's a way for us to do both, but we have to hold those leaders accountable. And you know who those are? They're the mayor, they're the police chief, and they're the commissioner. Because police reform and reimagining policing in our city, actually there are benefits to it, long-term benefits. Because there's a way, there can be some investments that are made where we can see a different interaction. So if someone witnesses someone getting shot, they won't be afraid to call the police and say something, because they'll know they'll be protected. So it's all about changing the culture and climate, but not forgetting that critical piece, that we want community policing. We want policing to work for the community, and we also want to hold our leaders accountable. So this is about accountability. So I too will not be voting on this budget, because I'm tired of us talking about the same thing and not delivering. So thank you.
Mr. President, if I may just quick, the reason why I said what I said about
Councilman Narducci.
someone not wanting the police, because there was a comment made that we should be spending the $40,000 on a recruiting a class moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further comments or questions? With that, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Council President Igliozzi.
Aye.
Councilwoman Anthony. Majority Whip Castillo. Councilman Correa. Council President Pro Tempore Espinal.
Aye.
Councilman Gonzalez.
Nay.
Deputy Majority Leader Harris.
Aye.
Councilor Kerwin. Nay. Councilwoman LaFortune.
Nay.
Councilor Miller. Nay. Senior Deputy Majority Leader Narducci.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ryan.
Aye.
Councilor Salvatore.
Aye.
Majority Leader Taylor.
Nay.
You have 8 ayes, 6 nays. The motion carries. The matter is passed for the first time on a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Senior Deputy Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to accept item number 6
Oh,
And
Madam, item
Second.
6 and 6,
that's
please.
your fault.
That's me.
Item number 6.
We're a little rusty, but we'll get through it. We'll get
Is an
there.
ordinance establishing a compensation plan for the city of Providence and repealing ordinance chapter 2021-9, number 178, approved April 19, 2021.
Mr. President,
Senior Deputy Majority Leader.
I'd like to make a motion to accept item number 6 as read and approve on a voice vote.
Second, Mr. President.
Roll call vote, right? Madam,
Second for the roll call vote.
Roll
Mr.
call.
Senior
President.
Deputy Majority Leader Harris. Madam Clerk, any comments or questions on item? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Council President Igliozzi,
Aye.
Councilwoman Anthony, Majority Whip Castillo, Councilman Correa, Council President Pro Tempore Espinal,
Aye.
Councilman Gonzalez,
Nay.
Deputy Majority Leader Harris,
Aye.
Councilor Kerwin,
Nay.
Councilwoman LaFortune,
Nay.
Councilor Miller,
Nay.
Senior Deputy Majority Leader Narducci,
Aye.
Councilwoman Ryan,
Aye.
Councilor Salvatore,
Aye.
Majority Leader Taylor.
No.
You have 8 ayes, 6 noes. The motion carries. The matter is passed for the first time on a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item number 7, please.
Item number 7, an ordinance establishing the classes of positions, the maximum number of employees, and the number of employees in certain classes in the city departments, and repealing ordinance chapter 2021-10, number 179, approved April 19, 2021, as amended.
Senior Deputy
Mr.
Narducci.
President, I'd like to make a motion to accept item number 7 and put out a voice vote.
Second, Mr. President.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Roll call vote,
Roll
I'm
call.
sorry.
Thank you. Discussion.
I got it right 4 times.
Madam Clerk, roll call vote.
Council President Igliozzi,
Aye.
Councilwoman Anthony, Majority Whip Castillo, Councilman Correa, Council President Pro Tempore Espinal,
Aye.
Councilman Gonzalez,
Nay.
Deputy Majority Leader Harris,
Aye.
Councilor Kerwin,
Nay.
Councilwoman LaFortune,
Nay.
Councilor Miller,
Nay.
Senior Deputy Majority Leader Narducci,
Aye.
Councilwoman Ryan,
Aye.
Councilor Salvatore,
Aye.
Majority Leader Taylor.
No.
You have 8 ayes and 6 noes. The motion carries. The matter is passed for the first time on a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Senior Deputy Majority Leader Narducci. Madam Clerk, is there any more matters before this honorable body?
There are no more matters on the
Can I
docket.
entertain a motion? to
Hearing
adjourn?
none, Mr. President, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second that motion.
Second by Deputy Majority Leader Harris. Discussion. Just a note, once again, we do have some food if anybody wants some over here in the side chamber here, number 1. Number 2, we will have another meeting on Thursday, our regular scheduled meeting at 6 o'clock. It'll be a live meeting also, okay? Other than that, be well, be safe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. Madam Clerk, this meeting is